All right, let's talk about what's really going on. Forget the headlines about Bitcoin ETFs, forget the meme coin madness for just a minute, because the real story, the one that's quietly reshaping our entire financial system, well, that's not happening on the public exchanges. It's happening behind closed doors, in boardrooms, and with the biggest banking players on the planet. And today, we're going to pull back that curtain. So look at this. It really is a tale of two different worlds. While the public is watching the crypto circus, the latest pump, the new ETF, the real heavyweights, the institutions, they're focused on something else entirely. They're rebuilding the fundamental plumbing of the global economy. We're talking settlement systems, a brand new financial messaging standard called ISO 2022, and the tokenization of pretty much everything. This is where the real power shift is happening.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's look at the current crypto news cycle for what the source material we're looking at today argues it really is. One big, giant distraction from a much more important foundational shift that's happening in global finance.
We've seen this kind of thing before, haven't we? It's a pattern. These massive foundational shifts often get missed or just flat out dismissed by most people until suddenly they're everywhere. Think about the internet back in '93, or Amazon when everyone thought they were toast during the dot-com bust, or what Uber did to the taxi industry. History just doesn't wait for permission. It just changes the game. So let's pivot away from that public spectacle. Let's go inside, into the hidden world of institutional finance. This is where the real power lies, and it's where the future of our entire financial system is being built right now. At the absolute heart of the U.S. market is this entity, the DTCC. That's the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. Now, to be clear, this isn't just a big player. It's the central nervous system. It processes and settles pretty much every single securities transaction you can think of. And get a load of this number. It's absolutely staggering. $2.14 quadrillion. That's the value of securities the DTCC settles every single year. This isn't just a big number, it is the lifeblood of the global economy. And according to the source material, it's about to get a revolutionary upgrade. But the DTCC isn't working on this alone. Oh no, this is a coordinated global effort. It's a complete rewiring of the financial system by the world's most powerful institutions. You're talking about the World Bank, the IMF, the Bank for International Settlements, and this whole network of central banks and regulators. They are literally the architects of a new financial world. Now, here is where things get really interesting. This is a key connection that the source material highlights. A former top architect of the DTCC's entire security settlement system is now sitting on Ripple's board of directors. The source presents this not as just some random career change, but as a strategic transfer of knowledge, moving the blueprints from the old system over to the new.
So, why is this all happening? What's driving this massive shift? To get that, we need to look at the problems with the financial infrastructure we have right now and why a totally new set of rails isn't just a nice-to-have, it's become absolutely essential. The markets we use today still run on what's called a T+1 settlement system. That means it still takes a whole day for a trade to officially clear. In a world of instant information and tokenized assets, that's an eternity. It's ancient. The future, the new rails, they demand a totally new standard. Settlement that is real-time, completely final, and perfectly synchronized. So if you're going to build these new rails, you need a very, very specific kind of tool. The source lays out this engineering checklist, basically a job description for the asset of the future. It has to be a neutral bridge asset. It has to handle incredibly complex liquidity routing. It must be compliant with that new global standard, ISO 2022, and it has to provide instant, irreversible final settlement. And this brings us to the absolute core claim of the source material. With this very specific checklist of requirements in mind, let's dig into why the source argues that these global institutions are all turning their attention to one particular digital asset, XRP. So the question is, what asset actually ticks all of those boxes? What tool has been specifically engineered from the ground up to solve this massive institutional problem? And here it is, the direct claim from the source material. That list of requirements we just went through, well, that doesn't describe Bitcoin. And it doesn't really talk about Ethereum. But according to this analysis, it is a perfect point-by-point description of XRP. Now, this is a really, really important point to understand. The role that Ripple and XRP are designed to play, at least according to this analysis, isn't about replacing banks or tearing down the system. It's about building a modern, high-speed infrastructure, those new rails, for the existing banking system to run on top of. Okay, so if that's the why, let's turn to the what. Let's actually look at the speculative model from the source that lays out a potential valuation path for XRP as this new financial system starts to come online. Okay, so here's the liquidity engine model from the source. It predicts that the price isn't going to move slowly and steadily. Instead, it's going to happen in these big jumps, distinct stages that are tied to specific real-world events. Stage 1 is basically speculation. Stage 2 is when the big institutional on-ramps finally open. Stage 3 is when utility and settlement become the dominant use case. And Stage 4, well, that's the game changer. That's the tokenization of assets and full integration with the DTCC, which the source projects could lead to a value of over $600. This quote just perfectly captures that fundamental shift. The whole idea is that at some point, XRP stops being treated like a speculative crypto coin, and it becomes an essential commodity for the global financial machine. It becomes the oil that lubricates the entire engine of real-world value settlement.
So let's wrap this up by framing this moment as the source sees it, as a quiet but absolutely critical turning point in the history of finance.
And this slide illustrates a timeless principle, right? Real, lasting value is always created during the silent construction phase. It's the infrastructure. You build the highways before everyone owns a car. You lay the pipelines before you have the modern energy grid. You lay the fiber optics before everyone is streaming video. The infrastructure always comes first, and then adoption and valuation follow.
And look, this isn't being presented as some far-off dream. The source points to specific activation windows. The ISO 2022 syncing cycles are literally happening right now. Banking settlement realignment is on the calendar for this fall. And a really critical date to keep an eye on is January 2027. That's when the entire DTCC system goes through its recertification. These are the milestones that could trigger the whole next stage of this shift.
And maybe the most dramatic claim from the source is this: the switch isn't going to be slow. It's not going to be a gradual transition. It's going to be a sudden, overnight event. One day, the system is running on the old, clunky rails, and the next, it will be on the new ones. No press release, no public warning. It will just happen. So we'll leave you with this final thought from the analysis. History doesn't just reward being present, it rewards placement. It rewards the foresight to understand what's being built in the quiet moments right before a huge paradigm shift. The source we've looked at today argues that we are living in one of those quiet moments, right now. The question it leaves us with is, where will you be when the switch gets flipped?